What is up, Excellency Esports? Welcome to Playoff Time. Today we have Divine Ascension Esports versus Degenerates Reformed. Today I am joined by Zeddy. How you feeling today, Zeddy?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited for tonight's game. Not gonna lie, kind of got a little ambushed by some of the things happening in tonight's match, but it's something we're always excited to see. And I just love watching good League of Legends, and nothing better than quarterfinals XLNC to provide that for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. We are getting immediately into draft today. Quarterfinals. Senna is going to be the first ban, followed by Tristana and Thresh.
These are some pretty classic, solid bans. You usually expect, especially at this level of play, to see a lot of counter bans. Banning out those combo picks, what players like to see in their games. And Senna and Thresh have shown to be pretty dominant for the last couple patches, so no surprises here for sure to start things off.
And talking more about OP picks, we have Camille and Udyr Bandway, and probably more of a comfort pick with the Kog'Maw Bandway by Divine Ascension.
Yeah, the Kog'Maw is definitely an interesting choice. I was looking at Tristana, and I have to say, Degenerates Reformed, like, their bans are very classic, to say the least. They're interesting Phase 1 bans for sure, but they're definitely things you would expect to see in this metagame. But that Kog'Maw ban is definitely an interesting read. This Udyr pickup, of course, being very, very dominant. Just a great B1 lead. And so far, this draft is actually exactly what you'd expect to see on 11.6, I believe we are on now. That's a beautiful 11.6 draft lead so far for both of these teams.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Udyr, one of those power junglers, as well as Hecarim and Seraphine. This OP pick can be played ADC, mid, or support. Can be just this dominant pick everywhere.
100%, and that's the value to get out of flex picks this early on in the draft as well. I'm not going to lie, I've been coaching League for about 3 years, and I'm getting outdrafted right now like crazy by both of these teams. Everybody is just picking up power picks left, right, and center. This is going to be a bloodbath. Game number 1 to start things off in a best of 5. When you have a draft that looks this dirty so early on, you're in for a ride.
Yeah, Karma and Civ are going to be the next picks. I like the Sivir pick. The Karma, also that flex pick, can be played mid, technically, top, and support.
Yeah, 100%. The Karma is a great flex that you've seen a lot. I like this Sivir pick, however. It's a new tech that a lot of people are starting to pick back up again. Sivir was kind of dead out of the meta for a really long time. And then people have started recently building Dark Harvest Manamune Sivir. The Q damage is just absolutely bonkers, especially if you can get the bounce back blade as well. It's about half HP's most AD carries down in the bottom side. So this Vayne pickup, from Degenerates Reformed, really interesting take on this play, because you've gotten yourself a counter pick, but your lane matchup's going to be a little interesting. So already, you can see how volatile these side lanes are going to be.
Oh, definitely. These side lanes going to be very good. Vayne having the ability to side lane if, let's say, Seraphine is the mid laner, say their top laner is something that wants to play with the team, not something like a Camille, something that's very strong. And I'm interested to see the Vayne versus Sivir matchup in the bot lane. I'm personally a bot lane main, so I'm excited to see what goes on there.
Yeah, that matchup specifically is known to be a pretty rough matchup for Sivir. Once the laning phase is over, you basically lose an entire ability in the 1v1. You don't really get a lot of value out of the spell shield. It's pretty hard to get that read on the condemned proc, and for the most part, Vayne can just tumble out of your Qs and out-damage you. So it's definitely a Vayne-favored matchup, but what a lot of people don't really consider is the laning phase, how you can slow push out those waves and force Vayne to farm under tower, which is not a situation she wants to be in the early game. But these next few picks mid, what do you think about this mid lane matchup, this Orianna versus Corki? This is definitely interesting.
Yeah, I think that this Orianna definitely going to be going for that early game pressure, while Corki wants to farm up, hit that late game, being able to 3-shot people with his rockets, shred that armor and magic resist. That's probably what he's going to be trying to do. I really like this Gnar pickup. I still think Gnar is one of the most OP top laners ever.
I completely agree, and right now, it's as good as time as any to be an Gnar main. This is really a counter pick, though. It's going to make that laning phase very difficult. And looking at really Degenerate Reform's draft, even though they have all these OP power picks, I don't know if I can say that they countered or won draft super hard, because where Degenerates Reform drafted for really strong lanes, they got the Hecarim, they got the Orianna into Corki, they got the Aurelia into the Gnar. On the opposite end, Divine Ascension has a well thought out and coordinated composition. You have so much movement speed, you have so much front to back damage, you have great lane control in the early game that honestly, just coming out of this draft alone, it doesn't matter how OP Degenerate Reform's draft is, because Divine Ascension just has a better grasp on the metagame.
Oh, definitely. This Corki, Karma, Udyr, Gnar, all very meta. Sivir starting to come back into the meta. Well, Aurelia, something that you don't really see too often.
She's one of those picks that, you know, it really depends on the situation, the game state. Definitely something you want to get a good lane matchup into. So obviously picking it into the Aurelia, the Gnar rather, is probably one of the best situations you can be in. It's one of those matchups that, you know, a lot of top lane mains will talk about with a lot of fear and panic in their voice, because you definitely don't want to be the Gnar playing into that Aurelia. It's pretty volatile.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Coltonson on Gnar. I think I've seen him play Gnar before, and it was pretty good.
Well, I'll be honest. I'm meeting all of these players for the first time tonight, so you know this is going to be a brand new experience for me. But I'm more than excited to see how they actually pilot these champions. But coming off of this draft, you know, looking at these lane matchups specifically, as I was saying, Degenerate Reform definitely has the advantage in the fact that their solo lanes and their 1v1, or their side lanes rather, they have those champion advantages. They have the matchups, the favorable matchups that they're looking for. What I think is going to come down to this game is really the ability for Degenerate Reform to play through the Orianna through the mid lane and get that turret down early so that you can actually force side lane pressure on the sides. Whereas when you're looking at Divine Ascension's draft, they have a solid team fight and they don't mind slowing the pace of the game down. So you really have kind of two conflicting styles. All teams have really strong champions, and I mean it's very clear that this is one of those games that is really going to come down to Degenerate Reform's ability to take their tempo in the early game and actually make something of it.
Yep, definitely. I do believe Divine Ascension, Obsidian, the higher ranking team, but if Degenerate Reformed wins this one, they will actually go on and face their sister team in the semifinals, I believe.
That's correct. Well, coming into this, you know, Divine Ascension, they have the better win record. As you mentioned, they are a slightly higher ranked team. You know, they're favored definitely to win this matchup. It is, however, a best of five. And, you know, with best of fives, you never know how it's going to end. You can always see some reverse sweeps or some long, drawn out conflicts between these two teams. But as you mentioned, Degenerates Reformed will be playing against Degenerate Esports in the semifinals if they're able to take the win tonight. So a lot of pressure on this team to really perform. And, you know, I have to say, like, you know, as much as I'm kind of criticizing some of the choices made in draft or the decisions here and there, in general, both of these drafts are strong and both of these teams are coming into this game, you know, on a great start with a great champion pool to work with.
Well, we will be heading to a break very soon. These best of fives, more of a marathon, while those best of twos that these teams were competing in were more like quick sprints. I hope everyone makes sure to check out our alternate channel at Excellency Esports 2, where we will be seeing Florida State Esports go up against, which was the other team? I believe it was Redefy Gaming. So be sure to go check that out. It's going to be a outstanding game there. Any last comments you have for this this series?
I'm just excited to see some great League of Legends. Let's get to it.
Yeah, we'll head to a short break. Don't go anywhere. esports fans? Welcome to quarterfinals day. We have Divine Ascension Obsidian versus Degenerate Reformed in the 3rd seed versus 6th seed matchup. I am joined today by Zeddy, the amazing color caster we have with us.
Thank you. That's a kind compliment. I really appreciate that. I mean, I'm looking forward to a really awesome game. We talked a little bit about before how we got into it, how these drafts are really going to affect the state of the game. And, you know, at this point, I mean, there's really no point in beating that point to death. It's kind of just down to see how these teams play out the early game. You know, pretty straightforward, just a nice 5-point to start things off. But hopefully we'll get some action once we get into these laning phases and see how they all match up against each other.
Yeah, just a few things that I would like to point out is the Gnar going Conqueror, actually probably going to be looking to team fight rather than playing for that lane matchup, not running the Grasp of the Undying, and Corki running that call, expecting to play a little bit more safe and farming.
Yeah, those are some definitely good points to bring up. The Conqueror Gnar is an interesting one. However, it's not completely unheard of, especially when Gore Drinker Gnar was more popular. You would see Conqueror potentially sometimes being picked up because it would give you some more increased regeneration. However, I expect the Gnar to go Stride Breaker now after the recent changes. The calls start mid though. Kind of takes you out of the laning phase a little bit as the Corki into the Orianna.
Definitely. Call more of that defensive, passive thing. I mean, that's kind of what Corki's wanted to play as. Both junglers starting on their red side, so this bot lane for Degenerates Reformed not having to leash.
This is a really intelligent path from Degenerates Reformed on, especially from Hot S'mores on the Hecarim to start top and path down. Not only are you splitting the map against the Udyr, which has the most favored matchup to you in the early game in that jungle, but you also put yourself in a position to punish the pushing Sivir in the bot lane. So already, really good start from Degenerates Reformed with this path. It looks like he is going to go for a full clear, however. Starting on Raptors might take that reset and switch things up a little bit. So we'll have to see how these junglers kind of play that 3-minute mark. You know, I always look for that 3-minute 15. That's when the game gets crazy on that first scuttle contest.
Oh yeah, definitely. One thing I would like to point out as well is Hecarim going Red Raptors Krugs, which is a very inefficient pathing if you're planning on going full clear, but pretty efficient if you're looking for a level 3 clear gank.
This is actually kind of surprising. The Hecarim Red start looked really good, and then this choice from Hot S'mores is going to put him behind a little bit. He's going to lose a lot of access to his jungle, especially with the Udyr pathing top. This gank coming out onto the Gnar, however, you know, might be pretty decent. You know, he knows his strong side is the Aurelia, and that is going to be the flash gank taken out. That's pretty strong.
Yeah, definitely going to be now the target for this Hecarim no flash top side. But as Coltonson does have that jump available once he hits level 3 now, which will give him a little bit more safety.
Absolutely. In the bottom side here, though, you know, this Vayne versus Sivir matchup, it's just, it's really hard to play the Vayne here. You can see Vayne's constantly pushing their tower, you know, as we mentioned before cast. And it's going to make it difficult to gain priority in the bottom side.
Crimvale and Void just duking it on the mid lane. I do believe Crimvale takes the advantage over, and now Latin Trap and Hot S'mores in the top side jungle. Hot S'mores does not win this, forced to back off this top side scuttle.
Yeah, this is kind of the disadvantage of starting on that top side and going for that early gank. Now Udyr not only has full control of the top scuttle, but should also be able to pick up the second one on the bottom side. Actually, it looked like Sivir and Karma picked that up for him as well. Lexar and Divine X, they grabbed that for their jungler as well. So that's already a 2 scuttle advantage for blue side here in the early game.
Oh, that is huge. I love to see the macro plays when a bot lane picks up the bot side scuttle and the jungler picks up the top side scuttle, or something like reverse with the top laner instead of the bot laners. It's just such good team play. You're able to get that vision on the map. You're able to get that extra gold on the map. And Udyr already building up a pretty substantial CS lead.
Yeah, it really goes to show the value of drafting priority in these lanes, right? You know, we talked about how Degenerate Reformed had better counter matchups, but you don't really get to play the laning phase when you're constantly forced under your tower and you have a losing jungle matchup. So there's definitely some strengths to Divine Ascension's draft that if they can really abuse the fact that they have the lane push, you know, they can really take control of this jungle and just force Hot S'mores on the back foot for the rest of the game.
Definitely. Heartstruck Brother now and Coltonson duking it out. Heartstruck Brother forced to pop that pot, and that Q deals a chunk of damage out of him. But here comes Latin Trap, getting that shield to speed himself up, but will be rooted by this Seraphine Flute Loops doing their job.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where, speaking of macro calls, when you already have secured the lane control as blue side, you can actually force a bit of a freeze here, let your jungler take the reset, and when they come back, you can gank the overextended red team and then force yourself onto Dragon. But honestly, that call coming out from Latin Trap to force that gank on the bottom side kind of just takes him off the game a little bit and gives Hecarim a little bit of time to get back into this game. That farm score, you can see, nearly evened out already, so losing a little bit of priority here in this early game.
Just everyone farming, doing their jobs. Slight CS lead in the top lane and jungle for Divine Ascension Obsidian. But other than that, I think it's pretty much going to be a farm fest. Lots of these people playing late game carries.
Yeah, I mean, a farm fest is good, like, for both of these teams, and honestly, especially so for Divine Ascension, if they can get a little bit of a lead and get to that mid game and they sidestep Sivir. I really like to see that good mechanical movement to dodge everything coming out from Flute Loops there. But if you're blue side here, you want to get to that 2-item point. You want to get that Manamune on the Sivir. So taking a slow early game is absolutely no issue.
Definitely. Manamune Sivir, you can go with the Duskblade Sivir. You can go a lot of different things on Sivir. That's usually what you'll see, though, the Manamune. As we are seeing a little bit of a top lane skirmish with Hot S'mores stealing away that Gromp, as Corki could be looking for a rotation, but Udyr just decides to back right off.
Yeah, it's just, like you're mentioning, it's just a lot of farming in the early game and just taking things real slow. But this Dragon, it's been up on the map for a lot longer than I expected to. 2 minutes now. Dragon's been up and nobody's really made a play to contest it. And as these red buffs respawn, red side or blue side rather will have the advantage here with that Udyr on the bottom side if they choose or opt to make a play here. Unfortunately, they're kind of taking red right on top of Lexar's resets. It's just kind of unfortunate timing really for this team.
Just unfortunate timing, very much so. But Flute Loops also have pretty low health, pretty low mana. Control wards down in this top side. Aurelia being able to grab her first back from that Vampiric Scepter, boots, and that armor, while only the Hearthbound Axe coming out from Coltonson.
I mean, for Aurelia, it's definitely not the optimal first back because you do want to get into that Blade of the Rune King, obviously. So you are building on path for that item. But Vampiric Scepter is not the fighting item you definitely want when you're in an advantage lane. I would have liked to see something a little bit more aggressive, maybe even path into that Triforce a little bit earlier, just so you can actually contest and fight this Gnar. But the Hearthbound Axe for Gnar is going to mean some easier trades, and it's slowly starting to kind of win back in that losing matchup. It's a matchup that you lose really hard early, but as the game goes later and later, you do get a little bit more agency. So the longer Aurelia takes, to get in Gnar's face and push that advantage early, the harder it's going to be to win the late game.
I feel what you're putting down there. Coltonson, definitely a strong laner. And Aurelia, this kind of skillful champion that takes a little bit of a lead, takes a little bit of a push from behind to get her ahead. And Dragon just going to be slain by the red team. Hot S'more is forced to ult right out of there, forced to use the Ghost, flash over the wall from Void, as Crimvale going to be the target of Latin Trap. We're going to get right out of there as Latin Trap not fast enough.
So unfortunate for Void. He flashed the wall with the up and then missed the ulti, but it looks like we're having a little bit of a fight in the top lane now.
Yeah, Coltonson flashing out of the way of the stun. Heartstruck Brother taking the top side of that trade.
And for the Aurelia there, like I was saying, you don't really have a super aggressive build. You kind of have to take slower trades and bank on that lifesteal to give you more extended sustain in these team fights. Going for an all-in like that, you burn the flash, which is obviously a huge victory. But, it's one of those situations where I feel like it could have been a kill if you just itemized a little bit stronger for that matchup.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Maybe grabbing the pickaxe instead. Did use that, the flawless duet there as well. Vanguard's Edge, excuse me. The Aurelia ultimate. Lexar spell shielding that, but the charm coming out with the ultimate from Lexar. Flute Loops being taken on really low exhaust, landing onto Fox Zero as lots of something for nothing.
I mean, I don't want to sound toxic, but I'm kind of missing Pinging Vayne there a little with that condemned to save Sivir from the all-in.
Yeah, as Hatsmore's going to be down here looking for that dive, but TP coming in from Corky and from the Gnar. Hatsmore's not going to be able to get out of this one as Void taking that kill. Coltonson duking it out with Fox. Zero Flute Loops too low to even help. Divine XZ also too low to really help. That was a 1-for-1 trade, but First Blood going over to the support.
There's a lot to break down in that team fight. On the one hand, you have all this tempo on the side of Degenerates Reformed. You force this dive, you've really disadvantaged Lexar, taking him out of the game for a significant period of time. And then, you force the 2 teleports as well out of both the Corki and the Gnar. But on the other hand, you're looking at that, as Divine Ascension, and you're saying, we just got Tower Doe 4 versus 2. We had no health, no mana, and no summoners, and we survived. And it's like, how much hope does that give you going into the mid game, knowing that, you have this mechanical advantage where you can kind of sidestep some of these plays and, really outbid your opponent in the 1v1. So definitely an interesting way to start off this early game.
Oh, I completely agree with you that tower dive, a little bit messy, kind of got the job done. Slight gold advantage just from that First Blood going over to Degenerates Reformed, only about 500.
A 500 gold lead is still a gold lead, but you have to remember in situations like this, when you're playing a team that, is favored to win the early laning matchups and really needs to take that tempo into the mid game, going even is going behind. So for Degenerates Reformed, it's really about taking this tempo and abusing it as much as they can now, because it is going to pay off less and less the longer this game goes on.
Mm-hmm. Divine Ascension Obsidian wanting to scale with this Corki, with this Sivir, especially with this Udyr and Gnar even. Land Trap taking a lot of damage, trying to get a freeze, but the huge flash from Land Trap. Here comes Coltonson with the rotation down. Crimvale trying his best to do anything he can, but already used the command Shockwave, not going to be able to get anything else out of that.
I mean, this is just one of those situations where Udyr kind of got skill checked a little bit. He's running in at the Orianna, really putting all of his pressure down, but there's only so much you can do as a really early game Udyr. You don't have the chem tank yet, so easily going to defend that one from Crimvale.
Yeah, and just want to bring up a point from but the missed ulti from the Aurelia, now Void Valkyring himself right out of there. But as I was saying, the call starting to actually work out in Corki's favor. Not really too many huge trades that were taken in the mid lane, especially with the cheater recall taken at about 3 minutes from Void.
Yeah, you can definitely get a lot of advantages starting with a call, especially when the enemy jungler isn't prioritizing your lane matchup. And I guess that's kind of like, the bittersweet victory for Divine Ascension is that they're supposed to lose the early game or lose their lane matchups a little bit, but because of that, the enemy jungler has so many options for lanes they can gank that if they don't gank your lane, you're getting so much free scaling out of that.
Yeah, but Coltonson getting the ult, but that huge save just from the Mega Gnar. Coltonson trying to get out of there, but getting stunned. Just trying to do anything he can, but will not be able to get out of there. Heartstruck brother getting that shutdown.
20 seconds off the flash there. Could have had an opportunity to get out, but just couldn't find it.
Yep, Fox Zero going into the ultimate form, but Lexar taking that kill. TP coming in from this Orianna. Crimvale looking for something. Does have the command Shockwave. Divine XC very low. TP coming in from the Aurelia as well. Crimvale using the ball delivery just on himself. Latin Trap now trying to run away as Corki rotating down. Lexar popping the spell shield, not going to grab anything, but the huge package coming out from Void. Now Heartstuck Brother going to be the next target. That Essence Reaver doing so much, and Crimvale's in a 2v1. Now, I don't know if you win this quite yet, but without the help of Sivir, you may not actually win this one. Crimvale with the flash forward from Void gets that kill. Latin Trap now clearing out a control ward in a 2v1 for himself, as Lexar not going to have any mana, missing that Q. Crimvale just doing so much damage.
What is this team fight? It just doesn't stop. They just keep, the ants go marching one by one with this one. It looked like such a solid engage. You had a really strong lead, and then you forced out all of these resources, and then all of a sudden, you just can't commit to a disengage. Everybody wants blood. They all want to fight. And I mean, honestly, coming out of that, maintaining that 500 gold lead for Degenerates Reformed, it's a win because you get this dragon control, and that's really, really big for this early game win con. So, kill score might have been evened up, but a huge win for the red side on that one.
Yeah, and just a small build question I have for my fellow challenger colorcaster, Lexar, going for the Gale Force. What are you thinking about that?
I think the Gale Force is a good item. I think it's a bad item on Sivir here. I'm definitely putting a lot of pressure on me with the way that you keep describing me, man. I'm getting nervous. I'm shaking a little bit. But definitely would have liked to see the Dustblade come out in this matchup. When you're playing against the Vayne, you know, you don't want to get to that mid-game, that late-game 1v1 situation. You know, I've mentioned before that this blue team scales, and that's true. But you don't scale into the Vayne.
Yeah, Collinson trying to flash away from Hardstuck Brother, but the perfect ultimate, the perfect stuns, nets a kill over to Hardstuck Brother, 2-1 on Aurelia.
Yeah, this is exactly how you kind of expect this lane to go, especially when you don't have enough jungle assistance. Both of these junglers correctly playing to the bottom side of the map. This is exactly what they want to be doing in this situation.
Yeah, Flute Loop's popping that encore. Lexar now shooting out the Q. The pizza boomerang grabbing that kill. The extra pepperoni there. A little bit too spicy for him. Now Void coming in, getting knocked back by Fox Zero. The huge ultimate, but not going to be enough as Lexar grabbing that kill. 5-1 on the Sivir.
That play was yummy, but I don't think I've ever watched a 2v2 and feel that hungry afterwards, man. Like, the way you're casting this stuff is absolutely crazy, but we love it. It's so much fun. But now at the top lane, like, that's a kind of an unexpected development. Gnar chasing Aurelia under the tower.
Yeah, a little bit weird. But, yeah.
It's just not what you expect. That being said, though, if you do check the items, the plated steel caps coming out from the Gnar mean a lot in this matchup, especially since Aurelia 99% of the damage she's dealing to you is going to be from auto attack, so you get a ton of value out of rushing that item. It's actually surprised not to see him rush it out first. So now having this huge movement speed advantage is going to mean that the Gnar can slowly start coming back up in this top lane, maybe try to close that CS gap just a little bit as we get closer and closer to Baron spawn.
Yeah, Lexar with these big sausage pizzas have been just huge with those boomerang tosses, getting so much pressure out of it with so much damage, even without a man immune right now.
I mean, the Sivir is always going to do damage, right? And this is the thing that you have to kind of recognize when you're rating and assessing these builds, is that there's definitely optimal builds and the metagame calls for certain things, but you can get away with certain items if you can play the matchup correctly. And when you're going Gale Force on Sivir, the main thing is that you want to be kiting a lot. You're not forcing lane pressure. You're not trying to poke someone out under tower. You're just trying to run them down and do as much damage as you can from a distance.
Yep, and the third solo kill topside from Hardstuck Brother. Hardstuck Brother doesn't look too hard stuck right now, acting like a plat or a diamond player with these solo kills, as Lexar and Divine XZ rotating up to the mid lane.
Yeah, I mean, this solo killing in lane for sure. You know, you look at a lane matchup and you say, this is Aurelia favorite. You know, Aurelia should get out of this with a lead. But a 3-kill lead, a 3-turret plate lead, and soon to be a solo turret take as well on the top side is not just the lead anymore. That's a mountain that you have to climb if you're blue side now. You have to deal with this uber-fed Aurelia that's going to be a constant threat in the side lane, and you're just a minute and a half out of Baron now.
Oh yeah, Baron going to be up very soon. Next Drake also up in about the same time in the next minute 30 to minute 45. These objectives are going to be really defining what happens through this mid to late game, as gold lead just about even right now. It's a Latin trap in the bot lane. Fox Zero popping that final hour, but it may be the final hour for him as he's trying to cut away, uses the flash from Latin trap, uses the heal. Fox Zero getting out on 1 HP, but Colton with the last auto attack. That was the final hour for Fox Zero.
Yeah, a great 2v1 play from Divine Ascension to find that pickup onto Vayne in the bottom side. You know, it's a great use of that chem tank on the Udyr. You have that item, you need to be threatening it, especially on those overextended targets. That being said, came pretty close. I mean, I was feeling pretty happy for Fox Zero with almost picking up that 1v1 kill, because I'm pretty sure if he kills the Udyr, the Gnar is soon to follow. So definitely a lot closer than you would have liked to see.
Yeah, pretty close. Seraphine picking up that Moonstone Renewer, kind of what you expect out of the Seraphine right now.
Oh,
not going for any damage really, but so far pretty normal builds, I'd say.
I mean, you don't really have a lot of flexibility with these champions. You know, if you're gonna meta slave and draft, you sure as hell better be meta slaving with your item picks. Otherwise, you're not really getting the value out of these champions. And, you know, you can see already in that jungle matchup, the chem tank is just such a strong item, probably the strongest tank item in the game right now. You know, we've seen a dramatic shift since the Sunfire meta, and it's really affected the pace of the game. A lot of these junglers really rely on movement speed, and that's why I really like the potential that you have with this blue side draft, combining the Udyr with the Chem tank with the Karma and the Sivir ult. It gives them so much threat potential on this Seraphine and Vayne that as we start to enter these mid to late game team fights, we might see a complete shift in the pace of the game.
Yep, the Arcade Corki with the huge Valkyrie and the package. Seraphine trying to set out an encore, but your flight's been canceled. Concert is over. As Hatsmore split pushing this top lane, already got one turret. Richter getting that second charge onto the inhib turret, but Hecarim just getting stunned. You can't run away when you're stunned, buddy. But still is able to get away without needing to use Ghost. And that shutdown going over to Lexar. Your pizza delivery gone.
Boltonson, I mean, I really like the setup for that play. I'm actually surprised we didn't get to see that kill because it was looking real hot for him. However, just dive in the mid lane, getting a little aggressive on the Aurelia. Not how you want to be piloting that pick at this pace in the game. That's going to get you real punished now, especially with Baron just right around the corner. This is definitely an angle now for Divine Ascension. They have the space to do it if they choose to do so. But this is, you know, this is the basics of competitive League of Legends. Never force more than one play on on another side of the map at the same time. Everything you do should be coordinated, and it's starting to really affect these teams in their decision making.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Don't want to make too many plays, otherwise you'll just get overwhelmed. That, just want to point out a small little thing. I love to see that interaction where Hecarim charges in, keeps extending the Seraphine encore range. It's just so huge.
It's great. It's a fine draft synergies like that, and especially on two champions that have been just so dominant since the start of the season. I mean, like, I could talk about this draft for hours. Like, I'm surprised that all of these champions made it through, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm looking at these drafts and I'm like, geez, half of these things should have been ban-hammered an hour ago. But I mean, it's really giving you some great gameplay to watch, and you get to see all these really fun, unique interactions. I think something that I'm really looking forward to seeing would maybe be an Orianna delivery system. You know, you have this great way, like this really scary backline threat on the side of Divine Ascension. So for Degenerates Reformed, if they can get on top of that backline with the Orianna ball, using the Hecarim, you know, you can really just wipe this team fight in a matter of seconds. You have the damage to do it. So finding some niche opportunities to exploit techs like that would definitely be exciting to watch.
Yeah, as here comes Mach 5 Hatsmores. Coltonson trying to get out, forced to flash away, but here comes Fox Zero. Are you going to condemn him away again? Will not put Coltonson in a 4v1, as Baron may be the look here for Degenerates Reformed.
You definitely hit my trigger warning there with that condemn, man. There it is, though. Look at that. I just said that. That's so awesome. I love seeing that stuff. The Hecarim delivery system, you know, it didn't actually deliver on anything this time, but, you know, it's such a good way of combining those champions. But, man, no, I don't want to see another Vayne condemn for the rest of this game. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, 2 items coming up on pretty much everyone. Sivir opting out of the Manamune so far, which is very interesting, as we were talking about seeing the Manamune pretty quick on the Sivir, which I usually expect too.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going Dark Harvest, if you're going to go Lethal Tempo and go with the Gale Force, I mean, you don't really have the space to path the Manamune in. It doesn't really fit with this style of build. You're definitely going for more of a crit-themed angle. So it's definitely a build that takes a lot longer to come online, which is, you know, a kind of a questionable choice, knowing that you're in to the Vayne matchup. You know, we'll probably likely see how that matchup plays out, but to be fair, Sivir currently 5-2, Vayne 0-4, got about an item and a half advantage on the Sivir. You know, she's got it sitting on a bit of gold now currently, so you have space to play around with the Sivir. You don't have to stress this item build too much.
Yeah, it's, as you said, probably going for that more attack speed. Those are the old ways of Sivir, I'd say. Lethality Sivir, the new deal, while like the old deal is, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, for most AD carries, especially at the start of the season, you were seeing that, right? When the critical strike chance switched and you were getting 20% on most of your items as opposed to 25, crit builds became a lot more inefficient. That's why you saw such a dramatic shift in the AD carry meta, and you were seeing all sorts of lethality carries going bot lane. Things like Collector Misfortune, Collector Jhin, Collector Kaisa. But now, you know, as the meta starts to shift a little bit and we're seeing some power being restored to these traditional carries, we're getting a lot more variety in the bottom lane. that being said, you know, you do definitely want to play to your strengths. And as this dragon spawning, I mean, I can guarantee you Divine Ascension would love to have some extra lethality and burst right now for this team fight.
Definitely, but Blue Loop's getting caught out. Pops the Encore, only grabs one, but will just get annihilated by Coltonson. Now Aurelia in the front line not doing anything as Hot S'more's running in. There is Orianna, Crim, Vale, split push in the top side, maybe getting an inhib for only a second. Drake for Divine Ascension Obsidian. This is a trade you want to be making.
Yeah, I mean, getting an inhib like that is so huge for the red side, especially knowing that Baron's right around the corner. This Hecarim engage, trying to get the Dragon Steals, definitely a little ambitious. And I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this game and I'm saying to myself, Divine Ascension should just be absolutely wiping the floor with Degenerates Reformed right now. But they're making some very questionable macro choices, leaving the Orianna alone up in the top side, taking fights on the bottom side that, you know, you might win out on and you might be able to get a second dragon, but you're losing control over the Baron pit now. And playing against the Vayne, you never want to give the Vayne easy access to Baron because you know she's going to take it in like 3.5 seconds. So very scary situation to be in if you're Divine Ascension.
Yeah, lots of plays to be made here, lots of options for both of these teams. Only about a 500 gold lead still for Degenerates Reformed. And as the game goes on, 500 gold becomes increasingly worthless.
Exactly right. And I mean, this is what you're going to want to be watching out for as the game progresses, looking to see these bigger items getting picked up on these carries. I believe Corky went for the full mana build, so it should be the shield bow coming up next for Void. Once that item comes online, it's going to make it so much harder to kill in these team fights, especially, you know, considering Degenerate Reform's style of playing these team fights. They want to get a lot of burst damage down quickly on these squishier targets. So Shield Bow, an excellent choice to pick up there for the Corky. But looking at these item checks now, I mean, a lot of these matchups, especially in the top lane, that's an Essence Reaver Aurelia. I almost missed that. That's crazy. What's that doing there, man? I gotta know.
That's an ADC item, silly. Play ADC if you want to build Essence Reaver.
You know what? Actually, I was discussing with a coaching friend of mine about whether Shield Bow Essence Reaver would become the new Triforce Blade of the Ruined King. And I have a feeling we're going to get to see that on cast tonight. So this should be pretty exciting. We'll have to see how that item combination actually works out in a live playtest. You know, it's always cool when you get to see things like that happen in games.
Yeah, TP coming in from Coltonson as Heartstuck brother still split pushing the bot lane, brother.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a side lane pressure is exactly what you need to be doing with that inhibitor taken down in the top side. You know that your team wants to take Baron. You know that they have the resources to do it. So if you can threaten a second inhibitor, that's a really good situation to be in.
Yeah, Crimvale Spell Shield being popped, but as well as Latin Traps speedy thingy.
Right. Yeah, I think that's actually the ability name.
Yeah, it is this ability name. I checked.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. The bear form, though, definitely with the Chem Tank just gives you so much movement speed, so much crowd control pressure if you can get on top of that one key target. I'd like to see him try to look for a carry pick here, but in the side lane, my gosh, that Aurelia damage is crazy.
Oh yeah, lots of damage. Aurelia with these two items, plus the Noon Quiver, maybe going for that Immortal Shield, but Lexar with the huge Gale Force going in, but now Heartstuck brother and Latin Trap in the bot lane. Latin Trap cannot deal with this Aurelia, and Vayne, even off camera, grabbing that kill as well onto Coltonson. I mean, everything's just going to heck right now.
Yeah, I mean, shout out honestly to the production crew for trying to keep track of everything that's happening in this game. I can guarantee you these teams are not making that easy for them. It's gonna be a nice little dive here to give Vayne an extra kill, but I mean, I'm kind of looking at, scratching my head thinking, you just took down 3 members of the opposite team. Baron is wide open. You know, like, we're getting an inhibitor and a tower off of this, but for Degenerate Reforms, like, that could have been the Baron, and that could have very well led to the game as well. So definitely gonna have to look for a new opportunity to do that. But taking a second inhibitor, not a horrible choice either.
Yeah, they will just barely be able to get this last inhib. That will probably mean Baron or an end.
No, that's definitely good. I mean, I was looking at that situation. I didn't really see how that happened, but when you've trickled the defenses so much of the enemy, it's really hard for them to actually defend these inhibitors, especially when, you know, they're taking split fights all over the map. So good macro read, taking out that third inhibitor. That's going to guarantee this Baron on their resets here. And that should
Or
pretty
next
much close
Drake.
out the game. Yeah, I mean, next Drake is an option, but when you're sitting on Soul Point Dragon versus a Baron that could potentially end the game, I think the choice is always Baron.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Your Orianna and your Aurelia right now really pulling their weight. While if we look at Fox Zero, may not be doing as well as you would have maybe expected out of a lane, but it is a Vayne dropping those rhymes like it's time for a Baron take in this cake.
Nice. I like the freestyling. That's good. We'll work on it off stream, but I think you have real potential here, kid. Looking at this Baron now, though, obviously that's going to drop in no time at all. Should be a pretty easy GG within the next couple seconds here. You're facing against a 5-stack team, got about a 5k gold advantage, and a Baron as well. They're just going to clear out the jungle on their way over here, but I don't really see how this team fight goes any other way.
Yeah, and we kind of expected it from the beginning in the pre-show. We said Degenerate Forms may be having a slight advantage here, but Divine Ascension Ruby does not want to give this one up. They're living to their final hour, as Vayne's ultimate says. Now, Void going to be the target, but the one shot, the 3-shot, as so many kills are going down. The next inhib's going down. Crimvale just flashing away from Coltonson. Coltonson trying to get out of there using the Karma Spell Shield. And they're just defending their base with their lives right now. But what can you do when there's 3 inhibs down?
This Reform just needs to take this slow and abuse the fact that these Baron minions are impossible to clear once that Sivir is down. You know, you're still in a 3v4 situation, but with no Sivir, it's almost impossible to clear out these minions. You still have a massive advantage in this fight.
Yeah, there comes the Aurelia ultimate, and Void being taken on solo. Hot S'mores using that Onslaught of Shadows will be slowed under turret, as that is a 2-man down for 3-man down. This could be a very slow take, as Heartstruck Brother now just trying to lifesteal a little bit, taking out this last Nexus turret. Can they take this last Nexus? But Corki grabbing that initial final kill on to Crimvale, and Shutdown going over to Lexar with that mushroomy pizza.
I mean, a great pickup for the blue team, but now you're kind of stuck playing turret defense for the next 4.5 minutes. You know, the Dragon's already been taken as well, so, you know, at least you don't have anything too bad to worry about here. You can kind of just sit and defend the base. With all the Barons gone on the red side, you might actually be able to make this base hold if you can play through that Sivir, but if I'm looking at the way these fights are being taken, they're just so split that as soon as one of these teams picks up on the fact that, you know, you can just jump on a champion, blow them up, and move on to the next one, the fight's going to be a wash. So really, I'm just waiting to see which one of these guys figures it out first.
Oh yeah, definitely. This can be a very quick match for Degenerates Reformed, or for Divine Ascension Obsidian, it's going to be a pretty long match.
I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm kind of just counting the seconds until that Nexus explodes. You know, this red team is taking their time to farm things out, waiting for those waves to crash. I assume they're probably going to go for a push here once Crimvale picks up that blue buff on her way down through to the middle lane. But you've got 3 inhibitors and no objectives on the map. I mean, there's really not a whole lot else to do other than threaten the Nexus. You don't really have too much to lose either. You can play it very slow and force them to fight you in your creep wave. Should be a pretty solid fight here for Degenerates Reformed.
Yeah, I'm ready for one last fight. Or could Divine Ascension Obsidian come back and really just secure this fight, and then they can just fight again and lose?
I mean, I love comeback stories, man. But I mean, if you're gonna have a comeback story, this is the best way to do it. The Mega No the Sivir ultimate. What a great way to
Yeah, Hot S'mores now going on in with the Onslaught of Shadows. Latin Trap being taken down so low, but will be taken out by Fox Zero. Resurrection from the Aurelia and the Flash Engage. Hot S'mores using that Ghost, as there's nothing left to do, as Crimvale is on the Nexus right now. And that's just G to the G. Degenerates Reformed taking it 1-0 in the quarterfinals.
Just a beautiful execution on that last team fight. You got engaged down, but you only lost to Seraphine, and Vayne in the backline, having recently just finished up the Infinity Edge. 3 crit items, that's 60% crit with an Infinity Edge. It's just too much damage to ignore. And Fox Zero, when completely untouched in that last fight, did so much damage, almost single-handedly carried that fight, and that's going to close out the game.
Yeah. Any last little bits of knowledge that we need to know from our Grandmaster Challenger, Iron, or whatever rank you are,
Somewhere,
Colorcaster?
somewhere in between there. No, man. I just love watching these games, and we're gonna get to see a whole new style. I assume going into the next game. I fully expect these bans to switch a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, this is Caster's curse. As soon as you say something with confidence, it's gonna get flipped on its head going into the next game. But I mean, I would like to see a little bit of a draft change just because I want to see how these players perform when they're off something that isn't just getting carried by the meta. Not to say that they're getting carried by the meta necessarily, but I just want to see them, force themselves to play a little bit harder, force themselves to play with a little bit more focus, because a lot of these fights were just very split and disoriented. It's kind of hard to lock it down. I'd love to see some like assassin type picks really force the enemy team to play coordinated or really get punished by that pick. We could see something like a Kiana, like a Kha'Zix. So that's kind of my projections going into game 2. But game number 1, really hard fought battle.
For sure, we're going to head to a short break, my fellow viewers of Excellency Esports. Please do not go anywhere, as we are going to be seeing a great game number 2. We'll see you guys in a little bit.